A family hears footsteps in the attic, but no one is supposed to be there. Days later, they are found butchered in one of the most baffling unsolved crimes in history. The story I want to tell you today takes place in a small, remote part of Germany. The year is 1922. Deep in the Bavarian countryside, about 70 kilometers north of Munich, lies a lonely farmstead known as Hinterkaifeck. This isolated homestead, surrounded by thick forests and open fields, housed 6 members of the Gruber family. Andreas Gruber, a strict and reclusive farmer, lived there with his wife, Kazilia, their widowed daughter Victoria Gabriel, and her 2 children, Kazilia Jr., 7, and Joseph, 2. Their maid, Maria Baumgartner, had just arrived the day before the tragic event. For months, strange and inexplicable things had been happening at Hinterkaifeck. Footsteps were heard in the attic. A newspaper from another town mysteriously appeared on their doorstep. The house key went missing. And then, the entire family was slaughtered. To this day, the case remains one of Germany's most baffling unsolved crimes. But what really happened that night, and who or what was behind this gruesome massacre? By the end of this video, you'll learn about the eerie warnings, strange discoveries, and why investigators believe the murderer may have stayed in the house, even after the killings. The ominous signs. Imagine living in an isolated farmhouse miles away from your nearest neighbor. The wind howls at night, and the only sounds you hear are the creaks and groans of your old home settling. Now imagine hearing something else, footsteps in the attic. This wasn't a figment of the imagination for the Gruber family of Hinterkaifeck, Germany. Days before their brutal murders, they began noticing strange occurrences. Their house keys vanished without a trace. A fresh set of footprints appeared in the snow, leading toward the house, but none leading away. A newspaper from another town, a town they had no connection to, appeared on their doorstep. And then there were the sounds. Andreas Gruber, the head of the household, swore he heard footsteps in the attic. When he searched, he found nothing, or rather, no one. But someone had been there, watching, waiting. A night of horror. On the night of March 31, 1922, the unthinkable happened. One by one, the members of the Gruber family, Andreas, his wife Kazilia, their widowed daughter Victoria, her children, and their newly hired maid, were brutally slain. The attacks were surgical, blunt force trauma to the head, precise, relentless. Investigators later determined that the victims were likely lured into the barn one by one, slaughtered methodically, and then dragged into a heap of bodies. The young maid and Victoria's son were killed inside the house, their fates sealed by the same murder weapon. But the strangest clue, the family's dog, alive, unharmed, but locked away, as if someone wanted to silence its barks. The sinister aftermath. Days passed before the bodies were discovered. The Grubers weren't expected in town, but the absence of little Kazilia from school raised suspicion. Neighbors came to check on them, and what they found would haunt them forever. 6 bodies, battered and lifeless. But here's what makes the Hinterkaifeck murders truly disturbing. The killer didn't flee immediately after the crime. Evidence showed that someone stayed in the house for several days. The cattle had been fed. The fireplace had been used. Food was missing from the pantry. Was the killer someone they knew? Someone who felt comfortable staying in their home after committing such an atrocity? Theories and suspects. Suspect number 1. The Toller brothers. The first suspects were the Toller brothers, known criminals in the area. They had been caught stealing before, and according to the former maid of the Gruber family, one of them had once tried to enter the house late at night. Even more disturbingly, he had taunted her, claiming he knew the dark secrets of the Gruber household, including the alleged incestuous relationship between Andreas and his daughter Victoria. Andreas had once shot at the Toller brothers when he caught them on his property. Could this have been revenge? But there was a problem with the robbery theory. Nothing valuable had been stolen. Gold coins, jewelry, and bonds were left untouched. If this had been a simple burglary, why had the murderer stayed in the house, feeding the animals and making fires? Suspect number 2. A military conspiracy. Some believe the killings were linked to a secret military operation. After World War I, Germany was forbidden from maintaining certain weapons, yet some Bavarians still supported illegal military efforts. The Gruber farm was rumored to have been a hiding place for weapons, and Andreas may have blackmailed officials for money. Has someone come to silence him? Investigators found evidence that aircraft were stored on the property months before the murders. Had soldiers come back to retrieve missing documents and eliminate all witnesses? But if this was the case, why the brutal, personal nature of the killings? Why spare the dog and tend to the farm? Suspect number 3, Lawrence Schlittenbauer. One name kept coming up: Lawrence Schlittenbauer, Victoria's former lover and the supposed father of Joseph. He was the first to discover the bodies, yet his behavior was bizarre. Witnesses say he unlocked the farmhouse door with a key, perhaps the same key that had gone missing before the murders. When he found Victoria's body, he reportedly shouted, "Where is my little boy?" But when questioned, he denied ever saying that. He also moved the bodies with ease, touching them without hesitation. Was he in shock, or was he unaffected because he already knew what he would find? Lawrence had been pressured by Victoria to pay child support, even though he believed Andreas was the real father. He had a motive, and the killer had clearly known their way around the farm. But without solid proof, Lawrence walked free. Suspect number 4, a husband's revenge. Victoria, the widowed daughter, had lost her husband, Carl Gabriel, in the war, or so it was believed. Some claimed Carl was still alive and had returned, only to find his wife with an illegitimate child. German POs in Russia even swore they met a man who confessed to the Hinterkaifeck murders. But how could that be if his platoon had witnessed his death years earlier? The Hinterkaifeck Murders, a chilling deathbed confession. Some crimes are so disturbing, so deeply unsettling, that they refuse to be forgotten. The Hinterkaifeck Murders are one such case, an unsolved massacre that has haunted Germany for over a century. A remote farmhouse, a family slaughtered, eerie signs of an intruder living in the house before and after the killings, and a confession that came decades too late. What really happened on that fateful night in 1922? And more importantly, who did it? The deathbed confession. For years, investigators struggled to piece together the truth behind the brutal slayings of the Gruber family. 6 innocent victims, including a 7-year-old child and a 2-year-old baby, bludgeoned to death with a weapon so sharp and deadly that it seemed to be part axe, part farming tool. But just when the case seemed to be a mystery that would never be solved, something shocking happened. In 1941, nearly 2 decades after the murders, an elderly woman lay dying. In the quiet moments before her passing, she whispered a chilling confession to a priest. "It was my brothers. My brothers killed them." She claimed her 2 brothers had committed the gruesome crime. By the time police received this new lead, one of the alleged killers had already died in a PO2 camp during World War II. The other, however, was still alive. Investigators tracked him down, desperate to finally close the case. But when confronted, the man denied everything. There was no hard evidence, no physical proof, only the whispered words of a dying woman. And so, despite the gravity of the accusations, the suspect was released. The truth? Lost once again. The eerie discovery. As if the crime itself weren't unsettling enough, there was one final twist that added another layer of mystery. A year after the murders, the Hinterkaifeck farmhouse was demolished. Workers had been called in to tear it down, and as they sifted through the remains, they uncovered something shocking: a hidden weapon. It was a hand-forged mattock, a farming tool with a sharp, curved blade. But this wasn't just any tool. A small screw protruded just below the blade, an exact match for the wounds found on the victims' skulls. Somehow, the murderer had hidden the weapon so well that it had escaped the original police search. Even the trained search dogs had missed it. This revelation sent chills down the investigators' spines. This wasn't the work of a frenzied, impulsive killer. This was premeditated, calculated, and precise. Whoever did this planned the murders in advance. And yet, even with this new discovery, no arrests were made. The murderer had slipped through the cracks, never to be caught. A lingering darkness. The Hinterkaifeck murders remain one of Germany's most disturbing unsolved crimes. Theories abound. Some believe it was a disgruntled farmhand or a jealous lover. Others suggest the killer was someone close to the family, someone who knew their routines and could move freely around the farm without suspicion. But what makes this case truly terrifying is what happened after the murders. Neighbors reported seeing smoke rising from the farmhouse chimney in the days following the killings. The farm animals were fed and cared for. Someone had been staying there. Whoever slaughtered the Grubers lived among their corpses, eating their food, tending to their farm, warming themselves by the fire. Why? Was it guilt, arrogance, or something even darker? Locals began whispering about curses and spirits. Some believe the land itself was tainted by the murders, that if you walked there at night, you'd hear the ghostly cries of the victims, still calling out for justice. Even today, some say that if you visit the site of the old farmhouse, you'll never leave the same. What do you think? So now the question is, who really committed the Hinterkaifeck murders? And why did they stay behind? Was it the brothers from the Death Confession, a family member harboring a dark secret, or someone else entirely? Let us know your theories in the comments below. And if you love disturbing true crime stories, don't forget to subscribe, because the next one, it's even more terrifying. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and watch your shadows.